Hello, I am Dave, and this is my retirement channel. So how did I find myself being retired? I worked for a company as an engineer for 41 years. I had planned to stay until age 70 when I would have 45 years in at that company. I had what I felt was my dream job. I was a subject matter expert. I created training material, taught classes, and gave people advice. I had no deadlines and no sign-off responsibilities. I worked with great people, I enjoyed my job, I got great feedback from my customers, and I got great reviews from my management. I had very little job stress. The company treated people well, better than most companies from what I could tell. The company was doing really well. We were making record profits and gaining market share. There was no reason for me not to stay until age 70. I also have a training business that I've been doing on my vacation days since 2006. I used to wonder, can I work full-time plus do the training business until age 70? Will I need to give up one or the other before then? In March of 2024, I and 4 others in my group got transferred into a different organization. It was not our choice. We were told that it's no big deal, our roles would stay the same, we could keep sitting with our old group. We would just be reporting through different management. We knew that this other group had a rather different culture than the group we were leaving, so we were apprehensive. But there was nothing we could do. My previous management knew me well, knew the quality of my work, knew my character. There was no need to keep my management informed of my daily activities. I assumed it would be the same with my new management. I was wrong. In May of 2024, my new supervisor told me that her peers were asking what I did, and she did not know what to tell them. And her management was starting to question my performance. So I started documenting all of my daily activities. I met with my boss monthly for a one-on-one, and I started sending her detailed reports about my activities for that month. In June of 2024, I had my first review with my new supervisor. It was the first bad review I have received in many years. Among other things, it was mentioned that I had been in the group for 3 months and had not yet accomplished certain items. I thought, where did these expectations come from? What happened to my role is not changing? I went through a period of frustration and anger. I wrote a really long email to my supervisor. I never sent it. I'm glad I didn't. Some things are better off not being said, even if they're true. This is when I realized that I would not be at my company until age 70. For the first time, I looked at my assets, what my Social Security payments would be, what our expenses are, and I made a spreadsheet of how things would look if I retired. I assumed an inflation rate and a return on investment, and I concluded that if I retired, my wife and I would not be rich, but we would be okay. Meanwhile, at work, I made a plan for how to address my supervisor's criticisms on my review. I ran it past my supervisor. She approved. I spent the rest of the year accomplishing the plan. I had some hope that things might work out. Meanwhile, in August of 2024, the company announced that it would be moving to a forced distribution system for reviews. Everyone needed to be ranked on a normal distribution. The bottom 5% would be fired. The next 10% would be punished by losing half their annual bonus. Shortly before the end of 2024, during one of our monthly one-on-ones, my supervisor mentioned that there was still something I had not accomplished, and she would make that clear on my annual review. The way it was stated, I assumed that my annual review would show that I had done well, but there was still something I needed to do to be considered doing really well. In February of 2025, I had my review. I had abundant documentation that I had done my tasks well. I had great feedback from my customers. My review admitted that everything I had done very well. However, it said that I had refused to get outside my comfort zone and proactively find additional projects in the new group. Again, where did this expectation come from? And based on this, I was one of the worst 15%, and I would be punished by losing half my annual bonus. At this point, I knew I had to leave in 2025. By this time, the poor guy who was deemed to be in the bottom 5% had already been fired. I knew that I would be one of the next ones on the chopping block. I started reading Reddit, and I read the stories about similar things happening to other people. At that point, the practice was to send a person a 5 a.m. email telling them that they had been fired. They would also get a text telling them to check their email. This was done on Fridays, which were work from home days. Every Friday, I would check my emails to see if this week was my week. It was a very stressful time. In April, I made the decision to retire at the end of August. I knew this would change the expectations. My stress level went down significantly. I just had to hold out for 4 more months. In June, I received my final review of my career. I was curious to see if it would be different now that I was on my way out the door anyway. It was not. I still left the review smiling because I knew that never again in my life would I receive another review. I had an eye-opening experience from observing one of my coworkers. My coworker was a highly competent person, a longtime employee, a leader in his field. He had received many honors and awards along the way. He received a worse review than I did. He also announced a retirement date. And then 3 months before his scheduled retirement date, they suddenly gave him a choice between going on a PIP or leaving at the end of the month. He wisely chose to leave at the end of the month. If you had told me 2 years ago that our company would treat its people this way, I would have said, no way, I've worked here for 40 years. The company doesn't treat people this way. But now they do. The culture has turned toxic. Employees live in fear. I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to retire. I pity the people who are not old enough to retire and must live in the fear, knowing that as the culling continues, it's only a matter of time before the bell tolls for them. For me, the process I have gone through in the past year and a half has given me a new perspective. I'm realizing that although I have good health at age 66, I cannot take it for granted that good health will continue. It really is time to move into the next stage of life. At this point, if the company and my situation there were to change back to the way it was 2 years ago, I would still say it's time for me to retire. What now? I plan to devote much more time to my training business. I have already started a new YouTube channel in which I talk about theology. I also plan to continue this channel that will talk about what I am experiencing in retirement. What about you? What process did you go through or are you going through in transition from working full-time to retirement? What issues are you facing as you enter retirement? More to come. Please subscribe and come back often for updates.